Hi, I'm Lori with Crafty Mama's Creations, and today I'm going to show you how to make a mask. So we're going to go from this to this. We are going to be making our masks now. I will have a link to the patterns that I'm going to be using so that you may download those and print those out to use for yourself. So you need to decide who you're making these for because there will be several different sizes of patterns to choose from. I have a kid's mask, a teenager / woman mask, and then I have a man and a large and an extra large mask. So you just choose which one you need to make. I have chosen both of my pieces of material. Now you can choose to use the same for the inside and the outside, or you can choose to have two different materials as I did on this one here. Make sure that you wash and dry your material before you cut anything out. That's very important because you will be washing and drying your masks after you wear them, and you don't want them to shrink. And I do use 100% cotton fabric, so it may shrink just a little in washing the first time, washing and drying, but after that you should not have any problem with shrinking. And you may also iron your material before you begin. And you will need to cut two pieces. And as you see, I am going to put the right sides together here. Now, this is going to be my outside piece that you are going to see. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough material here for the outside piece. I do not have it on mine, but you will actually extend this end by about a 1/2 inch. I always use chalk to outline my patterns with. You can use a fabric pen, marking pen, whatever you choose. I like the chalk. It's real easy to come off. It washes out easily. I have traced my pattern with my chalk, as you can see, and I measured a 1/2 inch past. And the reason for this is because we are going to make this a pocket inside the mask. So you can add a coffee filter in or something like that for extra protection. And now that I have it drawn off, I'm going to pin it so that it doesn't move. We don't want it sliding around as we cut. Make sure you get the corners especially so that it doesn't slip as you trim it out. And I use regular scissors. Some people use rotary cutters. That's fine too, if that's what you have. Either one will work. There is our first part of our mask that is going to be the outside. Now, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did with my second piece of material, which is going to be our lining. And I'm going to mark this one off as well. And this time you will not add the extension. This lining is not going to be as long as the outside. I have my outside and I have my lining. Alright, our next step is going to be to sew the lining piece. I had chose yellow for the lining piece. I still have the right sides together, and I have it pinned on the curved side. So we are going to sew just a straight stitch, about a 1/4 inch seam. And one helpful little hint is when you begin stitching, do 2 or 3 stitches and then do a back stitch. That just helps lock the stitches in place so you don't have to actually tie them and knot them. Just follow your curve. When you get to the end, back stitch again. So we have a nice little straight stitch. Now, because this is a curve, you're going to want to cut in the curve. Make sure you do not cut the stitches. If you cut the stitches, you're going to have to go back and restitch. Okay, this is just so that when we turn it right side out, that it will not be bulky, it will lay flat. We are going to open this up, and if you want to pin this, you can, but I'm going to lay the seam over to one side. It doesn't matter which side. I usually lay it over to the right, and we are going to top stitch. This was the reason for getting the coordinating thread. Okay, now when you top stitch this, you're not sewing a 1/4 inch seam. You're looking at the middle seam here, and you're just stitching right down beside it because you're wanting the hem underneath to be flat when you put this together. Again, you stitch, back stitch, and then make sure you are spreading this out, pressing it with your fingers as you go. If you don't pin it, you have to make sure that it is flat. Again, back stitch at the end. The next step is to hem the side edges of our lining piece. To do this, we're going to fold over about 1/4 inch and finger press it, and then fold it over one more time, same amount, about 1/4 inch, and just finger press it and then pin it. We're going to be sewing this little hem on the side, and then we're going to do the same on the other side. Now we're ready to hem each side. Make sure to stitch on the inside edge to make sure that you get all layers of your material there, and don't forget to back stitch to lock in your stitches. The next step is to stitch our outer covering. Again, I have pinned it on the curved side. We're going to follow the step that we did with our lining. Again, we're sewing about 1/4 inch seam, back stitch to lock in your stitches. Make sure to follow the curve. Okay, again, our curve, make sure you remember to cut the curves, just don't cut your stitching so that it will lay nice and flat. We're going to open it up, press the seam over to one side, and we're going to top stitch. Okay, now we have our top stitch for our outer covering. Now, we are not going to hem the sides yet. That will be in a later step for the outside. We are going to take our lining piece and our outside piece, and we are going to put them right sides together Okay, so we're lining up our seams in the middle. Make sure they are aligned and that the edges of your material are aligned as well, and pin as you go. Now I like to pin the top and then make sure they are lined up at the bottom as well. Makes for a much better fit if you go ahead and get them centered and then pin it. Okay, now that I have the top edge and the bottom edge pinned together, I'm going to now sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam. All right, we have the top seam and the bottom seam now in place, and again, because these seams are curved, we are going to trim or cut the curves. Make sure that you don't cut your seam there on your lining piece. Make sure you move down a little further to the curve and don't cut your stitches. And I do cut the bottom as well because it is slightly curved, but I just cut it in the middle. Now we are ready to turn it right side out. So you have this nice little pocket on either side that you can do that with. I just use my fingers, push it through, and here you're going to make sure that your seam, that they are turned completely. You want to finger press this as you go as well and pin it, because we are going to top stitch it to make it have a nice finished look. I have the top pinned where it's flat, and I have the bottom hem pinned where it's flat as well. Notice you do have this little extra on this side. We're going to make that a seam in just a moment as well, but we want to make sure that it is laying flat because we are going to go ahead and top stitch that hem. And then we're going to sew top stitch the top seam. So now we have this nice finished look for our outer side of our mask. The next step is to hem the ends. We're going to finger press about 1/4 inch, and then we're going to fold it all the way over to meet the lining piece. Okay, it's a little more than 1/4 inch because you want your elastic to be able to go through this little pocket. That's what you're creating, is a little pocket for your elastic to actually go through, and pin it. Once you have that pinned in place, then we're going to straight stitch right along the edge where it meets your lining. And now we have our nice little pocket that we can add another filter in there, or you can wear it like this. It does have the 2 layers. The last step is to put the elastic in. And I know you're looking at this piece of elastic and saying, wow, that's a long piece of elastic. This is actually 28 inches long. I measured it, and I cut it typically for a woman. 27.5 to 28 inches is how long I make the elastic, because this elastic will go around the head, not just loops around the ears. A lot of people do not like the loops around their ears. It pulls on their ears. So I created this one to go around the head. It's more comfortable to wear. And so I have my 28-inch piece of elastic, and I have a safety pin. I'm going to put my safety pin through. So I am feeding the elastic through one side. Make sure you don't pull it all the way through. Leave a tail out. And go up from the bottom on the other side. Feed it through that side. Once you have it all the way through, make sure they're straight, you don't have them twisted. And I overlap them about a 1/2 inch, and then I just hand stitch it down. If you want to use your machine, you can do that. I just prefer to hand stitch it, and once that is stitched in place, your mask is ready to wear. Okay, so I have overlapped my elastic about a 1/2 inch. I have my needle and thread. I doubled it and knotted it at the end, and I'm just going to basically do like a little whip stitch. Typically I try to keep it in the little pocket of the mask once it's stitched, so it's not going to be seen anyway. Stitch it all the way around. When you get to the end, I do a couple of stitches down the middle. We're going to knot it. When I make my loop, instead of pulling it all the way through, I'll pull my thread through it. It makes a nice knot there for you. Make another one with your fingers. Hold it down to the elastic. That secures it right against the elastic. And I do typically about 3 knots, and I'm done. I trim it, and I pull that part to the pocket so it's not seen, and it is ready to wear. It is better, honestly, if you can measure the head of the person that's going to be wearing it, to make sure that it fits them well. If it's somebody in your family, that shouldn't be a problem. If you're doing it for someone else, you might want to ask them to actually measure their head, and how you would do that is to measure from the front top part of their ear around the back of their head to the front top of the other side, and then do the same thing for the bottom, because the bottom, of course, is going to be a little smaller than the top part of their head. And then add those together with another inch to 2 inches for your seam and for the parts that's in the pocket, and it should fit nice and neat. So here is our finished product. Nice fit on the sides, around the nose, and under the chin. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget, I'm going to put the pattern down below so you can have that to print out for yourself in different sizes, along with some measurements. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So give me a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything I have coming up in the future.